Hello again! In our previous video, we talked about the mechanical components of drone systems. I explained which materials would be used. In today's lesson, we will examine the electronic components of drone systems. These components can be categorized into two classes. Now, in today's lesson, we will also examine the electronic components of drone systems. We can categorize the electronic components into two classes. The first category is the essential equipment for flight, the mandatory devices. The second category is non-essential devices for flight. Essential devices include sensors, boards, and materials for flying. Essential enables flying, non-essential for tasks. But at the same time, to assign a task to the drone, you will need different boards. At this point, the essential equipment is what our drone needs to perform its basic flying functions, while the non-essential equipment is what is necessary for our drone to carry out its tasks. So, what are the essential equipment? The first essential piece of equipment we mean is the flight control board. The flight control board is our brain, which interprets the commands received by our drone from the ground or through artificial intelligence, whether they are autonomous or manual. It sends orders to the motors and other development boards through the embedded software it contains. Along with this, we have electronic speed controllers, or ESCs, which allow us to control the speed of our motors. At the same time, we can perform the main propulsion system tasks of our drones, such as takeoff, landing, and maneuvering. We have motors that can be changed. The main reason these motors are present in the drone, as we mentioned, is to give the drone the ability to move. At the same time, our batteries are the devices that provide energy for the drone. Batteries can be divided into different structures among themselves. In drone systems, lithium polymer and lithium-ion batteries are the most commonly used. Let's first take a look at these materials one by one, and then we'll look at the non-essential equipment. Our flight control boards are primarily used to design the flight versions. As we mentioned, they are connected to our four motors. The basic need of these four motors also goes through our battery. Our flight control boards are connected to our four motors. The basic need of these four motors also goes through our battery. Let's assume we have LiPo batteries. The most important feature of the LiPo batteries here is that they can meet the instantaneous current needs of the drone motors. Other types of batteries are less preferred here because they cannot meet the high instantaneous current needs of drone motors, which is why lithium polymer batteries are favored. So, what are their disadvantages? Yes, they can handle high instantaneous currents, but because they have lower capacities, they result in shorter flight times, causing our drones to fly less. Our batteries are also connected to the ESCs, which go to each of our motors separately. The main purpose of our ESCs is to transmit the energy they receive from the battery to our motors, along with the data they get from the flight control board. Our main goal here is to distribute the energy we receive from the battery to the motors based on the signals we get from the flight control board. What kind of value do we gain from this? If we want to move our drone to the right axis, which of our motors need to work less? The two motors on the right side need to work less. Thus, the motors on the left side need to move our drone along this axis. So when our drone's ESCs receive the data that the two motors on the right need to work less, they distribute the power they get from the battery in this way. In this way, it distributes with a different variation. At the same time, the main point we want to mention here is that all the flight concepts of our drone are covered by the equipment we see here. And of course, every drone must have a controller, regardless of whether the drone is flying autonomously or with artificial intelligence support. Each of our drones must definitely have a controller and a receiver connected to the flight control board. Our controller can receive data through a receiver connected to the flight control board. We have to use these controllers in both autonomous systems and manual systems. These are the essential equipment used in our drones. So, what are our non-essential equipment, and why do we use them? The first of these is our additional development boards. So let's say you're going to use an image processing technology with the drone, and what you want to do is a 3D scan. To perform 3D scanning here using cameras with 3D scanning capabilities, you first need a development board, then a camera, and if you want to avoid vibrations, you need a gimbal. What we mean by development boards is that they are actively used in many competitions today. At the same time, we also use boards like Jetson Nano or Raspberry Pi intensively in many engineering projects. In addition, of course, you can mention many different boards. So, let's talk about what other non-essential equipment we have if you want. Our drone has telemetry systems that transfer flight data from the air to the ground, allowing you to see real-time data such as battery status, location, altitude, and many other different metrics. What we call telemetry is basically the process of the drone transmitting data to the ground, meaning to a control computer, a controller, or goggles while it's flying in the air. We do this thanks to telemetry devices. At the same time, if we want to see our drone's data, on our goggles or controller, we need to use OSD units. These are also non-essential equipment for flying. In today's lesson, we made a simple introduction to drone electronics. In the upcoming lessons, I will explain drone electronics in more detail. And then we will take a detailed look at the stages of their usage.